part of the problem is that merely bringing up this information and trying to bring pressure from the outside ultimately ends in almost nothing happening. That's not to say it's not worth talking about. It's not to say it's not worth fighting about. The world matters, and I care about the world. I'm one of the few people who generally tends to. But sometimes things have a way that, through internal pressures, things go too far and national conversations happen. I've talked to you in the past about, in fact, Italy. Italy having a priest who came out and tried to say that women ask for domestic abuse and that it's all on them. And oh, by the way, if you dress a certain way, you should expect to be raped. And surprisingly enough, not only did Rome and the Pope say, whoa, no, 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 we want nothing to do with what this person said. We are not with them, despite the fact that they've said almost the exact same thing word for word in the past. But because of this, Italy has started a national conversation, and it's extremely likely that Italy is actually going to come to a point to where maybe some newer understandings and some newer laws are enacted that start to protect the women of this country and start to distance ourselves away from the archaic thinking of, well, she's a slut, so she's not human and she deserves everything she gets because she's a slut, and that means she's a non-person. But keeping with the theme, and to show that, again, I'm a man of my word, I came across an article that I would have covered anyways because, again, this has to do with a horrible situation, but a national conversation that is going on. India arrests 6 in a new bus gang rape. Driver, conductor kidnapped lone woman on a bus. India police today arrested six men in another gang rape on a bus of a bus passenger in India. 4 weeks after a deadly attack on a student on a moving bus in the capital outraged Indians and led to calls for tougher rape laws. Police officer Rajjeet Singh, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to mispronounce your name on purpose, but I'm not sure how we would pronounce that in your particular tongue, so forgive me, said a 29-year-old woman was the only passenger on the bus as she was traveling to her village in northern Punjab state Friday night. The driver did not stop at her village, despite her repeated pleas, and drove her to a desolate location, he said. There, the driver and the conductor took her to a nearby building where they were joined by 5 friends and took turns raping her throughout the night, Singh said. The driver dropped the woman off at her village early yesterday, he said. Singh said police arrested 6 suspects yesterday and were searching for another. In her first published comments today, the mother of the 23-year-old student who died in December's gang rape said all 6 suspects in that case deserve to die. She said her daughter told her the youngest suspect, who faces a maximum of 3 years if convicted as a minor, participated in the most brutal aspects of the rape. Quote, now the only thing that will satisfy us is to see them punished. For what they did to her, they deserve to die, she said. Look, I am not in any way, shape, or form going to condone the woman who was, for lack of a better term, raped to death. Yes, this actually does happen. You cause internal trauma in there. You cause all sorts of complications, infections, diseases, Not to mention that the vaginal wall is delicate. It is not designed for vigorous work, especially if the person is not properly lubricated. And I really seriously don't want to go any further into the mechanics. If you don't know, Google it. Do some research yourself. But my research into the death penalty has tended to show that killing somebody who has killed and or brutalized and or raped a family member or family members generally doesn't bring people the satisfaction that they think that it will. And this is why I keep trying to talk about rationality, about logic. If we decide that we're going to meet barbarism with even more barbarism, then on what grounds are we more moral? On what grounds are we suddenly just in our actions? Because you might think, oh, this is going to send a message. Rape a girl, get killed. I don't think it's going to send that, and neither do I think is it a proportionate punishment for the crime. You may think that it's unsatisfactory if they merely spend the rest of their life in prison, or if they spend a good part of their life in prison, where they are likely to be raped, where they are not likely to be treated very well, if their prisons are any close to the prisons that we have here, where sex and sexual crimes are not treated well, especially if they are crimes against a minor. Not to mention that situational rapists, they don't tend to care if you're a man or a woman, as military rape has shown. A hole is a hole. If they can take advantage of you, they will take advantage of you, even if they need the assistance of two other brawny guys who will likely also rape you. I think at the very least, that is what these rapists deserve. But if we're not going to operate within the confines of the law, and I do believe in beefier laws in a lot of these countries where this stuff is just kind of brushed off, and I do not agree that rape should be simply brushed off. There's nothing okay about that one bit. But to try to amp up the punishment, to try to not make the punishment fit the crime, and then to act as though that somehow makes it right, that somehow makes us moral. I'm sorry, it does not. You know, I used to be an eye for an eye kind of guy. But the more I looked into it, the more I researched it, the more I also did some introspection, the more I found that I could not substantiate that. You know, keeping people in jail for the rest of their life, you know, you can argue about institutionalism all that you want, but that's keeping them away from doing further harm. That's making sure that they never do what they do again, unless they do it to other people within the prison. And even then, again, when you're a rapist, at least in American prisons, you're not treated kindly. They do not roll out the red carpet in prison. They do not tend to stand for that sort of thing. Now, you can talk about prison rape as well, but see, this is muddying an already muddy waters. It's one thing to be asking for a national conversation. It's another thing, unfortunately, though, to be asking for heads on pikes and acting as though this makes up for the years when justice wasn't being served, and that it's actually going to dissuade anybody. I hate to break it to people, but when you get into the world of rape and rapists and sexual crimes, prison generally is not it's not a deterrent, at least. It may make them fearful. It may make them weary, especially when they know how sexual crimes or sexual deviants and sexual criminals are treated inside the prison system. That said, however, it's just like with murder. The three major reasons people tend to murder generally don't factor in getting caught. And even if it were to, it's not a consideration. It's not something that's like, oh dear, if I do this, if I cross this line, I will be killed back. I better not do this. I better talk this over. Or I better just leave this situation entirely and live my life better somewhere else. Do they need better justice? Of course. But this has to come from within, and it has to be rational. It has to be right. Otherwise, you are no better than the people that you are condemning, full stop.